Is it rolling?
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Breakfast All Day podcast. We are now Breakfast All Day.
We are. Yes. What the Flick is no more, and of course What the Flick did involve a crew of talented cameramen, lighting directors, editors. We don't have that anymore.
We have Nick Lemire, who took time out from playing Lego Marvel Superheroes 2 to press the button on Alonso's phone.
And we are grateful.
Thank you, Nick. I'm Christy.
I'm Alonso.
I'm Matt.
We exist. We exist in the world. Happy New Year to all of you. Happy New Year to you guys.
Yes, happy 2019.
I will say that we've dropped the ball a little bit. Our first Breakfast All Day show, where is the breakfast?
I didn't want to, overplay that hand.
I'm having tea.
I mean, I guess we have
also,
the rest of the day. So
people really hate it when you eat in the microphone. That's been my experience. Unless you're really into ASMR, you do not want to hear that.
What's ASMR?
It's that thing where people whisper and they say words like crack attack, and it like helps you fall asleep because it makes tingles in your scalp. Do you know about this?
No.
Oh, you have a whole new avenue of YouTube to investigate.
That's where Borat is from.
No.
Uzbekistan.
Okay, so it's the beginning of the year. It's January, which is notoriously a terrible, terrible time for films. So we are going to, for the most part, blow off whatever is new this week.
Yes, and we're going to kick things off. We're moving forward with a new venture. And yes, Ben will be joining us when Ben can join us. But in the meantime, welcome. We'll be looking back at 2018 and talking about our best and worst films of the year.
Right. And we have a little bit of movie news for you as well. And we have a couple movies we're going to review. But let's start out with our best of, right?
Sure.
There were some really great movies last year to the extent, and I know I say this every year, but to the extent that I had a really hard time. Alonso couldn't even narrow his down to 10.
No, I know. I kind of cheated. I did a top 25. And that's the thing, is whenever people complain about, the movies are so terrible, it's like, maybe the movies that made the most money or the movies that played in the most theaters were not the greatest all the time, which is just kind of always the case. But I think if you're paying attention, and even now with Netflix and Hulu having so much great stuff going on, I mean, even if you live in the middle of nowhere with no art house theater, you could watch Roma on Netflix. You could watch Happy as Lazzaro on Netflix. Not to mention stuff, that wound up there later. My gauge is always, I could always recommend something to somebody at any time of year.
Yes. You want to start then, since you were recommending things? What's your number one movie of the year?
My number one movie of the year is, I'm kind of torn actually, because I did a narrative film and a narrative film list and a doc film list, and my number one's on both of them. No,
it was hard to pick.
It's weird. I feel weird putting those two against each other. I think they're very different. But anyway.
Wait, some movies aren't true?
My number one narrative was Paddington 2, because it is.
You did go for that. You stuck with that all year long.
Oh yeah, I saw the movie in January of last year, and that I wrote it all year because it is a gorgeous movie. It is a sweet movie. It's a movie about Brexit. It's a movie about the world that we live in right now, and it's an antidote against the world.
I will also point out this was the movie that I was shocked to find out that you had left before the credits.
I know. Well, I had to go podcast somewhere, and so on your advice, I saw it a second time and stayed, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah,
I've seen it a few more times since then.
Yeah. No, I've not, because I brought Nick with me, and he had to go to the bathroom.
It's on HBO Go.
Right. We also realized we just rewatched Black Panther yesterday, and we realized that we also got up before the last credit scene there because he had to go to the bathroom, because it's like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, but a Marvel movie, they've trained us now that we cannot budge until that final logo comes on. So that was my number one narrative film. My number one documentary film was Minding the Gap, which is screening on Hulu right now. Have y'all seen this film?
Yeah, it's our LA Film Critics Awards are next weekend, and
Minding
the Gap won
Best
Editing Award.
It was runner-up for doc.
It's excellent. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film, and the way it had been pitched to me, it premiered at Sundance last year, and I think it started airing on Hulu in August, and I didn't get around to it because I kept hearing, it's about these skateboarders. I was like, well, that's nice, but that kind of undersells the film. I mean, yes, they are skateboarders. They grew up together skateboarding. You see all this footage of them, throughout their lives skateboarding, but it's really a story about three guys with kind of damaged childhoods reaching adulthood and all sort of making the decision of not perpetuating the kind of family life they grew up in as they become adults and start, making their own decisions and living on their own. It's a moving film. It's powerful. It was one of the last films that I saw before doing my top 10 list, and I remember I was sitting on my sofa in my bathrobe, sobbing.
Oh wow!
It was I found it just devastating emotionally. It's a beautiful film. Really, check it out. It's on Hulu. Minding the Gap.
Yeah, as it goes along, it is not so much about skateboarding. It's
No.
about like the bittersweet growing up process and how it tears them apart, and they struggle to regain the thing that bound them, which was the skateboarding.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very intimate, and yet there's a universality to that element of
Totally.
it, where you grow up and you don't have as much in common anymore with the people that you thought were formative to you.
And you have to figure out what your own adulthood is going to be like, and if it's going to be like what you were raised in, or if you're going to sort of figure out a new path.
Right.
You know?
Do we all become our parents?
Yeah.
Or not? Right. So what is your number one then?
You know, it's a tough one. I didn't put my list together tonight.
It's okay. But did you not know at the end of last year what your number one was?
No, because I don't tend to think that way. I think part of it is having spent so much time at Rotten Tomatoes, like looking at the list and everything. It's the movies. The things that really work for me are, because it's ironic because like we did all these lists and stuff. Like I don't necessarily rank movies. It's like what are the ones that move me, and what are the ones that I would see again.
Sure.
And what are the ones that make me realize this is why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so a lot of times it's that sense of discovery. It's that sense of surprise and coming out of a movie and just being completely caught off guard. That being said, I loved Black Panther. Like I went into Black Panther thinking Black Panther was going to be great, hoping it was going to be great, and it absolutely delivered. And there's a few movies like that. Paddington 2 managed to be possibly even more moving than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rare, big major movie that still manages to surprise. I loved Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Totally.
Like that was, expectations were high. That one was terrific. I loved Wreck-It Ralph. A couple of horror movies that I love, like A Quiet Place, was amazing. Hereditary.
Loved Hereditary.
Was so good.
Now, A Quiet Place, I find, I loved it while I was watching it and immediately afterwards, but the further away from it I get, the more I find myself sort of picking holes in the whole thing.
There are so many questions.
Does it still hold up for you even after all this time?
It does. I mean, look, there's a lot of movies that still have holes for me, but that one I really liked. I think it holds up relatively well. But the ones that really were surprising, I'd say probably, if I'm going to take a page out of Alonso's book and do best doc and best narrative, I would say my favorite narrative, although I loved 8th Grade, I would say The Rider. The Rider was the one that just completely caught me off guard. And it's just such a beautiful film, and it's one of those things like drop everything and see it. It's just an amazing movie. And then the other one that, the doc that, and we raved about this a few weeks ago, my favorite docs are the ones that tell you a story that you never really, give you information that you didn't know existed and still make you feel something, and that's Bathtubs Over Broadway.
Wow, okay.
I was just talking about that with people over New Year's Day. A friend of ours who is a Broadway producer, and he loved it. And he's like, I just discovered this and it's so strange and I loved it. So yeah.
I got the book for Christmas.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, so that, I would say those, Rider was probably my favorite narrative, and Bathtubs Over Broadway is probably my favorite doc.
Okay.
By the way, my close second doc, which also LA Film Critics honored as the doc this year, is Shirkers, and it's on Netflix. Please go watch it if you haven't.
It is, and if I may tout our LA Film Critics Awards again, I get to give Sandy Tan the Best Documentary Award on that Saturday night. So
That'll
I'm excited to see her. So my favorite movie of the year is The Favorite, with and without a U. The Favorite. I was blown away by it. I'm inclined to like Yorgos Lanthimos anyway.
Sure.
And loved Dogtooth and The Lobster. I really liked Killing of a Sacred Deer. But this I loved because it's like it marries so much that shouldn't work, right? It looks like this very beautiful and rich and safe and staid kind of royal period piece.
Costume drama.
Yeah, and it's not. It's like it's anachronistic in the most fun, daring ways. And it's gorgeous, but there's something a little messy about all of it, whether like maybe a dress is a little bit off or the makeup's a little bit smeared. All three of those actresses are just tremendous, and the more you watch it, or upon repeated viewings perhaps, your sympathy shifts with all of them, because perhaps at first you really feel for Emma Stone because she's new here and she's abused and she's lost everything and she's clawing her way back. You might feel more for Rachel Weisz because she's true and she's loyal. She's mean, but she runs shit. She's in charge and that gets taken away from her. Or do you feel for Olivia Colman in the center, who is so needy and so misunderstood and seemingly so damaged and unlikable, but the more you watch her, the more you really feel for her because she's being manipulated and she constantly questions who she can trust.
Right.
So I just love the mix, the way it's shot with these thrilling tracking shots down these hallways. I love the
I love
big
the sort of
dance
the
scene.
fisheye lens where just the idea of like the
Right.
space that's going on here.
Yeah, so I dug The Favorite. That's my absolute favorite. But we all have others on our top 10 list, so I'll just list out a few others that I have on my list. I think you and I have some overlap in
Sure.
ours. I have Roma is my number 2.
Mine too.
Burning.
That was in my top 25. Yeah.
Burning is amazing. Go see Burning. Don't let anyone tell you about Burning
Yeah.
except go see
Go in
Burning.
blank. Leave No Trace.
That's a really good one. First Reformed I have on my list.
Yes, top 25 for me.
So Suspiria is on my top 10 list. Suspiria is on Alonso's worst list. This is like my favorite conversation to have with you ever. Because you're so flabbergasted by the fact that I evolved on this. We talked about it the first time and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't love Suspiria. And then I saw it again and I'm like, I get it. I totally get it now.
You know what? This is like, it's like hearing people talk about est, it's that thing of like, both EST back in the 70s where, there's some by some magical,
right, personal S.
by some magical process, like they've reached this level of understanding and sadly I have not. Well, maybe that's the case, but I thought the movie was horseshit and it was a great disappointment for me from a director that I love. And I liked Mother, and I understood the people who hated Mother, and I hate Suspiria, and I don't understand the people who like it. But whatever, if it works for you, I'm happy.
It does. And I went as Dakota Johnson for Halloween this past year in the gray sweatpants, not in the red ropey bikini situation.
barf.
No one needs to see that.
In the granny panties.
Yeah.
No, not barf you. I meant that.
No.
That costume's ridiculous.
All around.
Not tied up like in 50 Shades Free.
No. No one needs to see that either. That's for the privacy of my own home.
There you go.
Sorry to Bother You is on my list. 8th Grade, I know Alonso.
8th Grade's on my
both
top
have.
10.
Hereditary, I have with you.
We should mention Other Side of the Wind, Orson Welles' final film, which was reconstructed again by Netflix. That was on my top 10. And then the documentary about the making of that film, They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, was on my top 10 docs. So those are both available on Netflix, along with a third documentary hidden in the trailers and more section of Other Side of the Wind called A Final Cut for Orson. That's about the reconstruction of the movie that's also fascinating.
I'm glad you brought up The Favorite because there's a couple things I was thinking about you were talking about. On the way Olivia Colman's character is treated, the Queen. It's an interesting companion. Like you could do an interesting double feature with that and Mary Queen of Scots about women in power not knowing who they can trust. And one of them is the satire, and then one of them is the Yorgos Lanthimos. And then the other one is Rachel Weisz had a hell of a year between that and Disobedience.
I love Disobedience.
Right, so you could have your Rachel Weisz Lesbian Film Festival.
That is
There you
true.
go.
Right.
Always available to you. Yes.
Also having a good year was John C. McGinley. It was great in The Sisters Brothers, which is on my top
John C.
10
Reilly?
list. What is it? John, that's somebody else.
You're thinking
John's-
of the guy on Love Boat.
And Scrub. No, the guy in
No.
Scrubs. That's Ted McGinley. This is we're spiraling out of control. John C. Reilly had a great year this year with the Sisters Brothers and Stan and Ollie and Ralph Rex the Internet, which you like more than I did. And we'll talk about Holmes and Watson, but that movie's not good for anybody.
Yes, Alonso and I both have Support the Girls on our list. And then,
that was a great movie.
Yeah, and then my number 10, just because it's like the most entertaining kind of blockbuster to me of the year, was A Star Is Born. I dug it. I still have The Shallow stuck in my head. I can't get it out.
I had a sad boy and his horse movie, but it was not the writer. It was Lean on Pete.
It's a motif. Do you have any worst that you want to share, Matt? What are the worst movies of the year?
This was an interesting year because I spent a lot of time, having with the previous job. I saw a lot less movies than I would typically get a chance to, so that gave me the ability to skip a bunch of terrible movies. That being said, Nutcracker was terrible.
Yep, that's on my list too.
Nutcracker
That's
was-
on Alonso's list too.
What is going on?
That's on Nick's list too. I made him go see it.
Two directors and
I was shocked at how terrible Peppermint was.
That's on your list.
It's on my list also.
Peppermint was terrible.
I had a three-way tie of Peppermint, Proud Mary, and Red Sparrow, which is like strong female protagonists with weak-ass screenplays.
Yeah, Proud Mary was bad. Red Sparrow was really bad. Like Red Sparrow.
You sent me to horror school.
Well, right, like the misogyny of that movie is shocking. And that was terrible. Happy Time Murders was a lot funnier when it was called Avenue Q.
Or Team America World Police.
No, or the granddaddy of them all, Meet the Feebles. That's a much better version of this. This one is like, okay, I mean, Happy Time Murders was very much like, you know, okay, Henson, we get that you guys like to screw around with when you guys are doing the puppets. Like, we don't need to see that.
That doesn't. Well, no, we need to see it in an actual plot.
In a clever way.
With funny
It's
jokes
just
that
an
are funny.
idea. It's a one-joke movie.
But it's all been done, right? And
Pretty much.
It's
Yeah,
been
that can't be your only go-to.
Right. So if you're going to go to that, you got to bring something new to the table and actually be more than just shocking.
Life Itself.
Oh yes.
I didn't see that one. 50
Oh.
Shades Freed.
Oh, yeah.
We're all freed from that finally.
Didn't have one of the biggest laughs of the year, but it was purely unintentional.
And as much as I kind of like the book, the big budget movie I just hated was Ready Player One.
Yep.
Like Ready Player One.
That was on my bottom 10 too.
Amongst the sad things, like it doesn't even get the gaming right. Like, you know, and if you're a fanboy that goes to the mat for that one, God help you.
But you know what the irony of